My daughter cheated on her husband and got caught, and she begged me to file a false DV report against him to help her divorce. I did it to protect my daughter, but it backfired and I'm regretting everything. Secret voices. Hey guys, I'm leaning heavily toward the story being made up. But I'm uploading it because it's interesting and I can't say for sure that it's fake. Let me know what you think. I60F needs some perspective on a situation involving my daughter 32F, her husband John 35M, and their crumbling marriage. My daughter has been with John for 7 years, and they have 2 kids together, 6F and 4M. While John has always been a good provider, keeping the bills paid and giving them a comfortable life, he's cold, emotionally distant, and completely uninterested in being a real partner or father. He doesn't hit her or anything, but he might as well be a robot for all the warmth and affection he shows. My daughter has felt ignored and undervalued for years. She's tried talking to him, but he just brushes her off, claiming that providing financially is enough. Frankly, I think emotional neglect is just as bad as physical abuse in some cases. A few months ago, my daughter started an affair with a coworker. I don't condone cheating, but I can see how she got to this point. Her coworker treats her like she matters, and that's something she's never gotten from John. Well, John recently found out and now he's talking about divorce. Here's where the situation gets tricky. My daughter is terrified. John has the money, the resources, and a cold, calculating personality. She's convinced he'll use everything at his disposal to take the kids, the house, and the savings, leaving her with nothing. She's in full panic mode, and honestly, I can't blame her. She came to me yesterday and asked for my support in filing a domestic violence report against John. She wants to claim he's been abusive, so she can secure custody of the kids and protect herself in the divorce. To be clear, John has never physically harmed her. However, I do think his controlling and emotionally neglectful behavior counts as abusive, just not in the legal sense. I know a false report isn't exactly moral, but I also think about what's at stake here. If John wins in court, he could completely ruin my daughter's life. She's scared, she's desperate, and she doesn't see any other way to protect herself. As her mother, I feel like it's my job to support her, even if it means bending the rules. My husband 63M thinks I should stay out of it. He says this is their mess to clean up, and that helping her with this report could backfire spectacularly. But he's always been the hands-off parent, so it's easy for him to sit on the sidelines while I'm left to figure everything out. I'm the one my daughter turns to when things fall apart, and I can't just abandon her now when she needs me most. At the same time, I'm not blind to the risks. If this report doesn't hold up, it could ruin her case and blow up in our faces. And if John's career takes a hit because of this, I'll have to live with the guilt of being part of it. But then I think about how emotionally awful he's been to her, and I feel like maybe this is just karma coming for him. So Reddit, AITA for supporting my daughter in filing this report. She's my baby, and I feel like I have to do whatever it takes to help her protect herself. But part of me wonders if I'm crossing a line I shouldn't. Update. Edit. I've seen people accusing me of karma farming or making this up. I don't know what to say. Writing helps me clear my thoughts, and I'm not here to convince anyone. This will be my last post in this subreddit. I'll continue on my profile if anyone is interested. So, my daughter filed the report, and things have escalated faster than I expected. I didn't think it would actually happen. Maybe I thought she'd change her mind at the last second. But she went through with it. And now John, her husband, has been arrested. To clarify, I didn't physically file the report myself, but I was there when she did it. She said she couldn't do it alone, that she needed me by her side, and honestly, how could I say no? She's my baby, and I couldn't bear to see her fall apart like that. When we got to the station, she told the officers that John hit her during an argument a few nights ago. She even showed them bruises on her arm and side as evidence. I'll admit I had my doubts about how she got those bruises. When I asked her about them earlier, she just said, "Don't worry, Mom, they're real enough," and brushed it off. At the time, I convinced myself that maybe I didn't need to know the details, that it was better to focus on protecting her and her kids. But now that John is actually in jail, I'm not so sure. I was at my daughter's house the morning the police showed up. She was pacing back and forth, biting her nails, practically jumping at every noise outside. "Do you think they'll actually arrest him?" she asked me for the 10th time. I didn't have an answer. When the squad car finally pulled into John's driveway, my heart sang. I watched from inside as 2 officers knocked on his door. He came out looking confused, and when they explained what was happening, he started yelling. "I didn't touch her," he shouted. "What the hell is this?" I'll admit his reaction rattled me. He sounded genuinely shocked, not like someone who'd been caught red-handed. But before I could think too much about it, the officers cuffed him, put him in the car and drove off. When I turned back to my daughter, she was shaking but smiling through her tears. "It's finally over," she said. "He can't control me anymore." I hugged her, telling myself I'd done the right thing by supporting her. But deep down, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that something about the whole situation didn't sit right. Later that day, my husband called me. He was furious. "John called me from the station," he said. "He's saying the whole thing is a setup and that you're involved." I tried to brush him off. But then my husband dropped a bombshell. He says he has proof: my name. Videos, recordings, texts. He's already hired a lawyer, and they're going after both of them for defamation. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "What kind of proof?" I asked. But my husband didn't know the details. He just warned me to be careful, and said he wanted nothing to do with this mess. Now I'm stuck. I want to support my daughter. I want to believe that she's telling the truth, and that John really is the controlling, cold man she's always said he is. But I know it's not true. And it's making me question everything. Did I do the right thing by supporting her? Or have I just made a huge mistake that could blow up in both of our faces? I know a lot of you might say I should have stayed out of it. But when your child is crying and begging for your help, how do you turn your back on them? I'll update again once I figure out where this is going. For now, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Update. It's been 2 months since my daughter filed the report, and everything has taken a sharp turn. The charges against John have been dismissed. And now he's not just defending himself, he's actively fighting back. The fallout from this is hitting harder than I ever expected. And I don't know if my family will survive it. The dismissal of charges was a wake-up call for all of us. John's lawyer didn't waste any time. Within days, he filed a defamation lawsuit against my daughter. The court documents were brutal. They detailed the emotional and financial harm John had suffered because of the false report. His career stalled, clients dropped him, and he was put on unpaid leave. He's demanding $50,000 in damages, not enough to destroy my daughter financially, but enough to send a clear message. When my daughter found out about the lawsuit, she went ballistic. She spent hours ranting about how John was trying to punish her and make her life miserable. "He just wants to control me," she said, pacing back and forth. But even as she lashed out, I could see the panic in her eyes. She's terrified? And honestly, so am I. The worst part is that I've now been dragged directly into the lawsuit. John's lawyer subpoenaed me as a witness, arguing that I was a key participant in supporting my daughter's claims. When I received the notice, I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I wasn't the one who filed the report, but I was there when she did. I stood by her, supported her, even drove her to the station. Does that make me complicit? My husband thinks it does. "You made your bet," he told me when I showed him the subpoena. "Now you're going to have to lie in it." His words hurt, but they weren't exactly surprising. He's been furious with me since this whole thing started, blaming me for enabling our daughter and dragging the family into chaos. And honestly, he's not wrong. The strain this has put on my family is unbearable. My husband has all but checked out emotionally. He spends most of his nights at his brother's house, claiming he needs space, and when he is home we barely speak. My son, who was already distant, has now cut off contact completely. The last thing he said to me was, "Mom, you need to stop cleaning up her messes before she drags you down with her." Even my grandchildren are being affected. The custody arrangement is in place, but it's obvious they're struggling. My granddaughter, who's 6, has started acting out at school. Last week she got in trouble for hitting another child, a first for her. My grandson, who's only 4, keeps asking when his dad is coming back. He doesn't understand why he only sees John on certain days, and I don't know how to explain it to him without making things worse. Over the past few weeks, I've started to see my role in all of this more clearly. I've spent my entire life cleaning up my daughter's messes, telling myself that I was just being a good mother. But where has that gotten me? My marriage is on the rocks. My relationship with my son is practically non-existent. And now I'm being dragged into a lawsuit that could destroy what little peace I have left. And for what? To protect my daughter from consequences she'd brought on herself. For the first time, I'm starting to see her for who she really is. The recordings John submitted to the court, the ones where she laughed about using the system to lock him out of everything, were damning. Hearing her voice like that made me realize just how much I've been lying to myself about her. I love my daughter, but I can't keep pretending she's blameless. The defamation case is moving forward, and the court date is looming. I'll have to testify, and I've already decided I'm going to tell the truth. I won't lie to protect her, but the thought of what that will do to our relationship is tearing me apart. This whole situation feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. I don't know how we're going to move forward from this, but I'll update again once there's more to share. Update, not related to custody battle. I've spent the past few nights lying awake, replaying everything in my head. Every choice I've made, every word I've said, every time I told myself I was doing the right thing, it's all coming back to haunt me. When my daughter begged me to go with her to file that report, I thought I was helping her. I told myself that she was the victim. That John was cold and controlling and deserved whatever was coming his way. I told myself that I was being a good mother by standing by her side. But now, I don't know what to believe anymore. If I'm honest with myself, I've always been too soft on my daughter. She's my only girl, my baby, and I've always felt this overwhelming need to protect her. When she was little, I was the kind of mom who fought her battles for her, arguing with teachers, smoothing over playground fights, and making excuses when she messed up. As she got older, it didn't stop. I helped her out of bad relationships, covered for her when she dropped out of college, and even gave her money to pay off debts. She never told me full story about. Every time I told myself I was just being a good mom. That I was doing what any parent would do. But looking back now, I wonder if I've done her more harm than good. Maybe if I'd let her face the consequences of her actions earlier in life, she wouldn't have ended up here lying to the police, alienating her kid's father, and dragging me into a mess that's tearing our family apart. I hate that I'm even thinking this. But the more I replay everything, the more I question my daughter's version of events. I remember the way she looked when I asked her about those bruises, the way she avoided my eyes and said, "They're real enough." At the time, I convinced myself it didn't matter. I told myself the ends justified the means. But now, I can't stop wondering, did she fake them? And then there are the recordings John's lawyer presented to the court. I haven't heard them in full, but the snippets I've seen were enough to make my stomach turn. The tone in her voice. The way she laughed about taking him down. It's not the daughter I thought I knew. Have I been blind all these years? Have I ignored signs that she's not as innocent as I've always believed? I don't want to think that she's capable of lying to me. But the evidence is starting to pile up. And I can't ignore it anymore. What breaks my heart the most is how all of this is affecting my grandchildren. They're sweet, loving kids who didn't ask for any of this. My granddaughter has started acting out at school, getting into arguments with other kids, and refusing to participate in class. Her teacher called me yesterday to say she seems withdrawn and anxious, which is completely unlike her. My grandson, who's only 4, has started crying for his dad at bedtime. Last night he told me, "I miss Daddy, but Mommy says he's not coming back." Hearing those words felt like a knife to my chest. I can't stop thinking about what this is doing to them. They deserve stability, love, and a safe home, and I'm terrified they're not getting that right now. If John is serious about pursuing custody, maybe that's what's best for them. But how do I even begin to say that to my daughter? I've spent so much of my life trying to protect my daughter from pain. But now I'm starting to see that maybe I've been protecting her from consequences she needed to face. I think about what my husband said, that I've been enabling her, not helping her. At the time I brushed it off. But now I can't stop hearing his words in my head. He's right, isn't he? If I keep standing by her, if I keep defending her actions, am I just making things worse? Am I teaching her that it's okay to lie, manipulate, and hurt people as long as she doesn't have to deal with the fallout? But if I step back now, what does that make me? A bad mother? A traitor? How can I look my daughter in the eye and tell her she's on her own when she's begging me for help? I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and no matter which path I choose, I lose something. If I stay loyal to my daughter, I risk alienating the rest of my family, ruining my relationship with my husband, and possibly even facing legal consequences myself. But if I walk away, if I tell her I can't support her anymore, I lose her. And maybe that's what scares me the most. For now, I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. The custody hearing is coming up, and I know things are going to get worse before they get better. I just hope I can figure out what the right thing to do is before it's too late. Update. The custody hearing was yesterday, and I'm still trying to process everything that happened. I don't think I've ever felt this level of stress, not even when my kids were young and life felt like one endless juggling act. It was supposed to be a straightforward hearing, but it turned into something much bigger, something I wasn't ready for. We arrived at the courthouse early. My daughter was dressed in a conservative outfit her lawyer recommended, holding her head high like she was ready to win this battle. But I could tell she was nervous. Her hands were shaking, and she kept muttering under her breath about how unfair it was that this was even happening. John showed up about 20 minutes later, and the difference between them couldn't have been starker. He looked calm, composed, and confident. He was with his lawyer, who had a stack of papers and what looked like a binder full of evidence. Seeing them walk in together, my stomach churned. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew this wasn't going to go the way my daughter hoped. The judge started by hearing from both lawyers. My daughter's lawyer argued that she was the primary caregiver, and that removing the kids from their home would be disruptive and harmful. He focused on how she had always been the one to handle their day-to-day needs, while John was often busy with work. John's lawyer, on the other hand, came out swinging. He argued that my daughter had created a hostile environment for the children, and that her actions, including filing a false police report, proved she was willing to manipulate the truth to serve her own interests. And then came the evidence. First, they played the recordings again. This time they weren't just snippets, they played full conversations my daughter had with her friend, and at one point even with Mike. Hearing her voice on the recording, laughing about how she could use the system to get what she wanted, made me feel physically ill. I couldn't look at the judge. I couldn't even look at my daughter. Then came the testimony. John's lawyer had subpoenaed several people to testify, including one of my daughter's coworkers and Mike's wife. The coworker talked about how my daughter openly flirted with Mike at work, and bragged about how she was working on her exit strategy from her marriage. Mike's wife, meanwhile, painted a damning picture of my daughter as a homewrecker who had no problem inserting herself into another family's life, without regard for the consequences. It was brutal. I could see my daughter shrinking in her chair with every word, her confidence crumbling right in front of me. When John spoke, he didn't lash out. He didn't yell or accuse. Instead, he talked about his kids, their favorite games, their routines, their quirks. He talked about how much he loved them, and how heartbroken he was to have been separated from them for the past 2 months. He admitted that he hadn't been a perfect husband. That he'd worked too much and taken his family for granted. But he also said he never deserved what my daughter put him through. And honestly, he sounded believable. He sounded like a father who genuinely wanted what was best for his children. After hearing everything, the judge ruled for joint custody, but with a twist. The kids will live primarily with John during the week, and spend weekends with my daughter. The judge also ordered mandatory therapy for both parents and the kids, as well as a review in 6 months to see how things are progressing. My daughter was devastated. As soon as we left the courtroom, she broke down in tears, saying, "I'm losing my babies." I tried to comfort her. But the truth is, I didn't know what to say. Part of me feels like the judge made the right call. Now that the custody arrangement is settled, the focus will shift to the defamation case. My daughter's lawyer is trying to negotiate a settlement to avoid a full-blown trial. But John doesn't seem interested in settling. He wants her to face the consequences of her actions, and honestly, I can't blame him. I've been avoiding John's lawyer's calls because I'm terrified of being dragged into this mess any further. I wasn't the one who lied. But I was there. I supported her. And I don't know if that's enough to make me legally culpable. But the thought keeps me up at night. Last night, my husband sat me down and gave me an ultimatum. He said he can't keep living in this state of chaos, and that if I don't start making changes, he's going to leave. I've had enough, he said. I'm tired of cleaning up after her and watching you destroy yourself in the process. If you want to keep enabling her, fine, but I won't be a part of it. His words cut me deeply because, in my heart, I know he's right. I've spent my entire life putting my daughter first, no matter what. And it's cost me my marriage, my peace, and my relationship with my son. So here I am, once again feeling like I'm at a crossroads. Do I keep standing by my daughter, knowing it might ruin everything else in my life? Or do I finally step back and let her deal with the consequences of her choices? For the first time, I'm seriously considering walking away, not because I don't love her, but because I need to love myself enough to stop being dragged down with her. I don't know what I'll do yet, but I'll update again once I figure it out. For now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. Update. It's been a few months since the custody hearing, and I thought things couldn't possibly get worse. I was wrong. The defamation case is now in full swing, and the fallout is unlike anything I imagined. This isn't just about my daughter anymore. It's about me too and the choices I've made. John wasn't bluffing about going all in with the defamation case. His lawyer has been relentless and the court documents are brutal. They've detailed everything from the false police report to the recordings, even the affair. My daughter's lawyer is trying to argue that the false report wasn't malicious, just a desperate act by a woman who felt cornered. But John's lawyer isn't buying it. They've painted my daughter as a manipulative liar who tried to ruin a man's life for her own gain. What's worse is that they've subpoenaed me as a witness. I tried to stay out of it, but John's team claims I was a key participant in supporting her allegations, even if I didn't file the report myself. I can't tell you how terrified I am. I've never been in court for anything other than a speeding ticket, and now I'm being dragged into something that could destroy my reputation. My health is starting to suffer under the weight of all this. I've been having migraines, my blood pressure is through the roof, and I can barely sleep. Every time my phone rings, I feel like I'm about to have a heart attack. My husband has completely checked out emotionally. He sleeps in the guest room most nights and spends most of his time out of the house. When he is home, we barely speak. And my son? He's done. He sent me a text last week saying he doesn't want to hear from me again until I get my priorities straight. I've never felt more alone in my life. The custody arrangement has been hard on the kids, especially my granddaughter. She's old enough to sense the tension, and I think she blames my daughter for everything. She told me the other day, "Mommy said Daddy's mean, but he's not. I like being at his house better." Hearing that broke my heart, not just for my daughter but for the kids. They're being forced to grow up too fast, and it's all because of this mess. My daughter refuses to take any responsibility though. She insists John has brainwashed the kids against her, and accuses me of not being supportive enough when I try to suggest otherwise. The court date for the defamation case is coming up, and I've been forced to meet with John's lawyer to prepare for my testimony. The lawyer wasn't rude, but she didn't sugarcoat anything either. She asked me pointed questions about what I knew and when I knew it. Did I see the bruises before she filed the report? Did I encourage her to go to the police? Did I ever try to stop her? I tried to be vague, but she pressed harder. Mrs. O.P., the evidence suggests you were aware that the allegations were fabricated. Can you confirm or deny this? I wanted to defend my daughter, but the words wouldn't come. The truth is, I don't know if I can keep lying for her. After that meeting, I came home and sat in my car for almost an hour, too scared to go inside. When I finally did, my husband was waiting for me. He didn't yell or lecture me. He just looked at me and said, "How much more are you going to lose for her? Haven't you sacrificed enough?" And he's right. I've already lost so much: my marriage, my relationship with my son, my peace of mind. I confronted my daughter that night. I told her I couldn't keep doing this, that I wouldn't lie on the stand or help her anymore. She didn't take it well. "You're my mother," she shouted. "You're supposed to be on my side." "I was on your side," I told her. "But this isn't right, and you need to take responsibility for what you've done." She stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I don't know where this leaves us. I feel like I'm standing on a precipice, about to lose everything. But maybe that's what needs to happen for me to rebuild. The court date is next week, and I've decided to tell the truth. I won't throw my daughter under the bus, but I won't lie for her either. I have to live with myself, and that means doing the right thing, even if it costs me my relationship with her. I'm scared but also strangely relieved. For the first time in months, I feel like making a choice that isn't driven by fear or guilt. I'll update again after the court hearing. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I'm finally ready to face it. Update: the court hearing for the defamation case was yesterday, and I'm still reeling. I knew it was going to be intense, but I wasn't prepared for just how devastating it would be. By the time the hearing ended, it felt like everyone jawed. My daughter and me was laid bare in front of the court. The days leading up to the hearing were some of the most stressful of my life. I knew I'd have to testify, and I decided to tell the truth, but the anxiety of what that might mean was eating me alive. My daughter barely spoke to me all week. She was furious when I told her I wouldn't lie on the stand. "You're betraying me," she said. "After everything I've been through, you're just going to hand me over to him." I tried to reason with her. "Telling the truth isn't betrayal," I said. "It's the only way to start fixing this mess." But she wasn't having it. My husband stayed out of it entirely. He didn't even come to the hearing. "I can't watch this train wreck anymore," he told me the night before. "I hope it works out for you, but I'm done." When we arrived at the courthouse, I could feel the tension radiating off my daughter. She looked calm on the outside, stone-faced and composed, but I knew her well enough to see the cracks underneath. John, on the other hand, was as calm and confident as ever. He sat next to his lawyer. Flipping through papers like this was just another day at work. The judge began by reviewing the basic facts of the case. The false police report, the recordings, and the fallout on John's career. Then both sides presented their arguments. John's lawyer painted a clear picture of my daughter as a manipulative and dishonest person who weaponized the legal system to punish him for her own failings. They played the recordings again. But this time they included new clips, ones I hadn't heard before. In one, my daughter talked about how filing the report would lock him out of everything and give her the upper hand in the divorce. Hearing her say those words in her own voice made my stomach drop. I felt a deep, sickening shame. Then John himself took the stand. He talked about how the false accusations had damaged his reputation and his career. He explained how he'd been put on unpaid leave, how he'd lost clients, and how the stigma of the accusations might never go away, even with the charges dismissed. But what struck me most was when he talked about the emotional toll. He looked directly at my daughter as he said, "I may not have been the best husband, but I never deserved this. You didn't just hurt me, you hurt our children too." When it was my daughter's turn, her lawyer tried to shift the narrative. They argued that she'd acted out of desperation, that she was a victim of emotional neglect, and that she didn't intend to harm John's career. Her lawyer also tried to claim the recordings were taken out of context. But the judge didn't seem convinced. When my daughter took the stand, she cried. She talked about how lonely she'd felt in the marriage, and how she'd been terrified John would use his money and connections to take everything from her in the divorce. It was hard to watch. I could see that part of her truly believed she'd been backed into a corner. But as she spoke, it became clear that the judge wasn't buying it entirely. Then it was my turn. As I walked to the witness stand, my hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the Bible to take the oath. I felt the weight of every eye in the room, my daughter's pleading gaze, John's cold stare, the judge's neutral expression. The lawyer started with basic questions. Did I go with my daughter to file the report? Did I know about the bruises? Did I ever encourage or discourage her actions? I answered truthfully but carefully. I admitted I went with her to the police station, and that I supported her at the time. But I stopped short of saying I knew the report was false. Then came the hard question. Mrs. O.P., did you believe your daughter's claims were true when she made them? There was a long pause. I could feel my daughter willing me to say yes. But I couldn't do it. I wanted to believe her, I said finally. But looking back now, I don't think I did. The room was silent. My daughter looked like I'd slapped her, and I could hear a sharp intake of breath from her lawyer. At the end of the hearing, the judge ruled in John's favor. He awarded him $50,000 in damages, not enough to ruin my daughter financially, but enough to send a clear message. The judge also scolded my daughter for her actions, saying, using the legal system as a weapon to settle personal grievances is not only unethical, it's harmful to everyone involved. I could feel my daughter's rage boiling as we walked out of the courtroom. That night, my daughter packed her things and left my house. She said she couldn't live with someone who stabbed her in the back. I haven't heard from her since. My husband, surprisingly, was kind about it. He told me, "You did what you had to do. Maybe one day she'll understand that. But I don't know if she will. And I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for letting things get this far in the first place." Right now, I'm trying to pick up the pieces. My husband has agreed to work on our marriage, but it's going to take time. My son reached out to me today for the first time in months. He said he's proud of me for finally standing up for what's right. As for my daughter, I don't know. I hope she'll find her way back to me someday. But for now, I think we both need some distance. Thank you to everyone who has followed this journey. I wish I could say it had a happy ending. But maybe this is the ending we all needed. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and share it with your friends.